maybe Mark Guehi himself was having second thoughts on deadline day about whether this was the right move.
I'm not having at all that he didn't want to go and didn't want to make the move. You know, this is Liverpool, and look what they're doing at the moment. They're already Premier League champions.
So ultimately, I think Parish has made the decision. We need to keep our manager, and the best way to do that is by keeping our captain. And I think there was a danger that if Steve Parish overruled his manager, particularly bearing in mind there's a decent job in Germany that Erik ten Hag has just vacated at Bayer Leverkusen, that Oliver Glasner may threaten to walk away.
I think it's going to take a long time for that relationship to be repaired, and they are totally relying on Mark Guehi being a good person and a good professional. And there's a lot of players out there who would not be like that.
Everybody knew that they were going to bid. Why did they wait until the last minute?
Palace's asking price was quite high earlier in the summer. I don't really think Liverpool have done a lot wrong here. I think personally the mistake that Palace made was not cashing in on Guehi last summer.
They might be thinking, well, actually, we've probably got enough to get us through to the end of this season, so we can get him on a free next summer, so why wouldn't we do that? Hello and welcome to Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface. talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook is here, and so is everyone's favourite Premier League legend, West Ham United, Rotherham, Charlton and Chelsea FA Cup winner. It's Scott Minto on the programme today. It's the international break, which means for us it's just a little bit lighter, so there's a couple of days off here and there. I usually would be at games every day if we could be, but with the fact that there isn't any, we have to stay at home, which is good news for Crookmeister, because he has had a very difficult time. He's been under the cosh, bit of pressure, non-stop phone ringing. Can you come on this show? Can you come on that show? I've got this bit of news for you. Every 2 seconds, it's been non-stop, hasn't it, Crookmeister? Have you decompressed? How have you decompressed?
Decompressed, interesting. I've spent the bulk of the week at Butlins in Bognor Regis, which is
of course you have,
which is an interesting place to try and unwind. But I did go and see Greg Davies, the comedian, last night, and that was fantastic.
Sorry, mate, I'm not feeling sorry for Crookie at all. You know, he charges every time he even is a phone call, so he's made more money than Alexander Isak has in this transfer window. I'm not feeling sorry for him at all.
Some might say he's done his bidding for him as well. Anyway, Scotty's not happy about rule breaking. We'll get to that a little bit later on. I went to see a band last night, and it was great. I had a really great experience. But I got the venue wrong. So, you know, like there's a few venues in Manchester, some smaller ones, some bigger ones, whatever. I thought this was, you know, one of the ones on the outskirts of town. I don't know why I just misread the ticket. Got in a cab, went to the Manchester Apollo, got there outside, and it was like boarded up. There was no one there. And I was like, oh, I don't think I'm in the right place. Checked the tickets and realised I'd actually booked to see a gig at the Manchester Students' Union. So I turned up, middle-aged man, in cowboy boots and a very fancy shirt, and turned up at the Student Union. And Brilliant. My wife said to me that she did hear someone standing behind us, a younger member of the audience, it's a Students' Union, suggest that cowboy boots tucked into jeans? What kind of flex is that? So that's my new phrase as I walk around. What kind of flex is that? I don't know what it means, but apparently something that the kids say. Anyway, international breaks are often running, and it's important for Thomas Tuchel. We've got a lot to be getting on with, but we're going to also have a look at the transfer window as well and see who's been doing what, including why Mark Guehi's deal didn't go through to Liverpool. And I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that Steve Parish was in the gym. Despite the drama of the Isak situation, the deal that caused the most drama on deadline day was arguably Mark Guehi's fallen through transfer that looked done. Palace even produced a goodbye video to their captain, but it collapsed because Oliver Glasner put his foot down and said he isn't going anywhere because they can't get a replacement. Was it as simple as that, Crook? Because the inside track that we're all hearing is quite fascinating.
It is fascinating, and I've heard numerous different versions of events, actually, including that maybe Mark Guehi himself was having second thoughts on deadline day about whether this was the right move. I think the most accurate version, the one we reported as the drama unfolded on deadline day. And you always get one of these stories that keeps you entertained and enthralled right up until the window closes. It was, as you said, that Oliver Glasner made it clear to Steve Parish, as he did in his interview 24 hours before, that under no circumstances could Palace afford to sell their captain. And I think there was a danger that if Steve Parish overruled his manager, particularly bearing in mind there's a decent job in Germany that Erik ten Hag has just vacated at Bayer Leverkusen, that Oliver Glasner may threaten to walk away from Palace. So ultimately, I think Parish has made the decision, we need to keep our manager, and the best way to do that is by keeping our captain. So a win-win situation for Crystal Palace fans, but obviously not ideal for Mark Guehi, because who knows what can happen between now and the end of the season in terms of Liverpool's interest.
Yeah, I mean, he will still get a big move, won't he? Because there's no doubt that some big, whether it be European giant or Premier League giant, will definitely come into him, especially if he's on a free transfer. And actually from January, he can start negotiating with clubs on the continent, Scott. So he'll have no shortage of suitors.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not necessarily comparing myself to him, but I went on the free to Benfica. I didn't see that coming until after the FA Cup final, so when the season had finished. So anything can happen. But I do feel for Mark Guehi. I mean, look, he's the one guy in this, and you look at Johan Vista, what he did, Alexander Isak, what he did, and they got their moves, and Mark Guehi didn't. I'm not having at all. I'm not surprised it's come out, but I'm not having at all that he didn't want to go and didn't want to make the move. You know, this is Liverpool, and look what they're doing at the moment. They're already Premier League champions. They're absolutely tearing it up in the transfer market. And if he had have gone, that would have been the perfect transfer market for Liverpool. He could get a serious injury. And I know people just throw that out willy-nilly, but that actually really can happen. I was quite happy to let my contract run out because I did that on a couple of occasions because I was happy with whatever happened. What will be. But clearly, remember that straight after Stamford Bridge, where they got that draw, and Oliver Glasner kind of called him over, and he went no. So this has been going on for weeks. This is not just a last day thing, and suddenly got a phone call. Liverpool could be coming in. He's made it known that he wants to leave a couple of weeks ago. Now, will Liverpool come in for him? They might do. They might not. I don't really get the. Not from Palace's point of view, from a football point of view, he can go in January for 25 million. Just by him staying to the end of the season, Palace could finish easily 4 or 5 places higher up in the table. It's £3 million a place. They can create history again by winning the Europa Conference League. And you know what I think? Any Premier League side in that competition should be favourites to win it. This is a wonderful opportunity for Palace to be absolutely the best time in their history. So, but the bottom line is collateral damage is Mark Guehi. I don't blame Oliver Glasner at all. He's got to do what's right for him and his football club. But at the same time, I think it's going to take a long time for that relationship to be repaired. And they are totally relying on Mark Guehi being a good person and a good professional. And there's a lot of players out there who would not be like that.
Yeah, he is, though, and he's one of these great sort of characteristics is the fact that he is a solid citizen and he will get on with it, even if he is a little bit disappointed, which is one of the reports that's doing the rounds. You mentioned this is something that's been going on for a few weeks, and it was obvious that Liverpool wanted him. So why then, Crook, did it take Liverpool so long to make a formal bid for him until the final weekend of the transfer window? That's got to be the biggest question, hasn't it? Because, I mentioned to you in one of our transfer pods at the beginning of the weekend that actually there was a little bit of pushback about Liverpool's behaviour from inside Crystal Palace. It was well known they would come in for him right at the end. Liverpool would refute any suggestion of wrongdoing. But, like Scott said, everybody knew that they were going to bid. Why did they wait until the last minute?
Well, this is what happens in transfer windows. It's a game of poker, a game of brinkmanship, if you like. We saw it to a certain extent with Chelsea and Alejandro Garnacho. We reported quite early in the summer that Chelsea had told Garnacho they were coming, just to wait, sit patiently, bide his time. All the time, their view was that Manchester United's asking price would have to come down because the nearer you get to the end of the window, the more desperate the selling club becomes. It happened with Anthony at Manchester United as well. Real Betis would have loved to have signed him. the day after the Conference League final. But again, they waited until the last couple of days of the window to get the best possible deal. And it was the same for Liverpool and Mark Guehi. Their need wasn't urgent because Van Dijk and Konate have started the season fully fit. So it wasn't like they were short in terms of their starting 11 for a central defender. And Palace's asking price was quite high earlier in the summer, well in excess of £40 million. Obviously, that came down to 35 plus a sell-on, which was the fee that was agreed eventually on deadline day. So I don't really think Liverpool have done a lot wrong here. I think personally the mistake that Palace made was not cashing in on Guehi last summer. You can say, okay, he's gone on to help them win the FA Cup. Who's to say if that would have happened if he wasn't there? But they would have got £60 million for him last summer. It would have been 35 this summer. They're probably now going to have to sell him in January for what, £20 million, or let him go on a free.
Sam, I don't want to bash Liverpool because they're a fantastic football club and they've had a great window. And what Arne Slot did, classy guy, with everything that they've dealt with things both on and off the pitch, and you know what I mean by that. But £35 million could have been done, even £40 million. The only reason that it's that low is because he's got a year left in his contract. So take advantage of that. To get Mark Guehi for 45 million is unbelievable. So get the deal done. And actually, it could be argued, forget about the math, that his signing was more important than Alexander Isak, the way that Ekitike is playing and the way that they're scoring goals. I appreciate in terms of numbers have gone. You want to replace that. But, I mean, what would we all have thought if they'd have got Mark Guehi? It's almost done and dusted with the Premier League title.
Well, maybe it's a good thing that they didn't for that reason, because otherwise we'd be sitting here today saying, right, should we just get the trophy out and engrave their name on it? So maybe we've got a bit more of a contest as a result of that. But they might still get Guehi. And actually, you know, you say they could get him for 30, 40 million, whatever. They might be thinking, well, actually, we've probably got enough to get us through to the end of this season. So we can get him on a free next summer. So why wouldn't we do that?
Well, they were clearly willing to pay the 35 million to get him now. And yes, Konate had a very good game against Arsenal, but he hadn't had a good game in the Community Shield in the first two opening games, and there's no guarantee that he will be like the Arsenal game for the rest of the season. That was a really important signing where I'll go back to the 35, 40 million. It almost could have been done and dusted the Premier League title.
Okay, let's move on from Mark Guehi, and good luck to him, by the way, this weekend because he's playing for England, and we'll talk about the England squad in just a second. We're going to talk about Grimsby because Scott's unhappy, and England's opponents further down the line, Serbia, because we just need to get a little insight into what their World Cup qualification situation actually really is, and how they're playing, because they've got some players that everybody knows, and they've got some Premier League players in there as well. But let's just quickly round up the window. I tried to sort of think, what deals caught our eye that maybe have gone under the radar a little bit? Crook?
I don't think there was anything hugely unexpected. I mean, I think Nicholas Jackson to Bayern Munich and the fee that Chelsea have managed to agree there by way of an obligation is pretty eye-catching. The story that you broke actually on deadline day about Brian Brobby and Sunderland, I think really completes what is a good window for the Black Cats. Myself and Ben Jacobs did a YouTube video the day after the deadline grading each of the 20 Premier League clubs as if they were taking GCSE exams. And while we gave Liverpool an A star, I think we both agreed that Sunderland had an A window as well, because you'll know that I was sweet on them to stay up before the first ball was kicked. The fact they've spent over £100 million I think has given them a really good opportunity, and to be able to attract people like Brobby, who a couple of years ago was on the brink of a move to Manchester United, Granit Xhaka as well, Simon Adingra, who I think started the season well. Not only do I think they're going to stay up Sunderland, I think they might finish nearer to mid-table than they will to the relegation places. In terms of tales of the unexpected, if you like, what's missed in this whole Mark Guehi saga is that it was a Brighton player who basically scuppered the deal. Obviously, there's a massive rivalry between Palace and Brighton, but Igor turning down Palace to pitch up at West Ham, which I think is a terrible signing from them, by the way. I don't understand it. But for him to be the story on deadline day, I'm not sure that too many of us would have expected that.
Well, just explain why you think it's terrible.
I don't think he's very good, basically. And West Ham need people who are going to come in and improve the team. They were in for Axel Disasi as well. I think that would have probably been a better signing than Eagle. I'm not convinced that he's going to make the difference between them struggling and not.
A couple of defenders that caught my eye that moved maybe earlier in the window, but we haven't really spoken about them much. Oliver Glasner at Brighton went under the radar a little bit. Left-footed, comfortable under pressure, good at line-breaking passes, did really well at PSV. I think he'll be a very good, astute signing, especially with Lewis Dunn getting a little bit older. Adrien Truffert, who went from Rennes to Bournemouth. Crook and I spoke about him a lot when he first joined. I'd seen him a few times because I'd done Rennes quite a lot in the Europa League a couple of years ago. And I always thought that he was a terrific looking player, the way he's sort of very creative but athletic, gets up and down. And I think we've seen that recently and is a decent sort of switch for Kerkez. Scott, any deals that you think went under the radar?
Yeah, you mentioned Adrien Truffert, and I spoke to Tommy Elphick about him, and he said he's really impressed everybody, including the manager, and actually may even be a little bit more cultured than Kerkez, but obviously he's still got a lot to get to that level. So him coming in what is a Bournemouth depleted defence, I think is very important indeed. I'm sort of going more. I actually saw David Moyes yesterday at a charity event and did a Q&A with him. And all the Everton fans were just all over Jack Grealish and the signing that he's made. I know he's only on loan, but he's got a point to prove. I think he's got a manager who will allow him to do what he needs to do. And the start he's made so far, I think, has been absolutely fantastic. I don't really want to mention Mohamed Kudus because obviously he's sort of down tools a little bit or said he wanted to leave West Ham, but I think he's made a really good start to the season as well. Ekitike being another one. But actually, Granit Xhaka and Jordan Henderson, I think off the pitch with those two clubs that, Crookie's gone a little bit big on Sunderland being mid-table, but I do think they've had a very good transfer window. But behind the scenes, I cannot begin to underestimate or emphasise how important it is, these senior pros, these leaders, when the teams will go through bad patches, and they will go through several bad patches throughout the season, that the confidence and morale is still high. So those two, for me, I think have been excellent signings.
Yeah, I mean, on Everton, I think they look a little bit light in defence, a bit lopsided in attack, but they have enough bodies there. They might have to play one of the wingers on the other side. Dewsbury Hall's a good signing. Jack, obviously, brilliant. They've recruited well for the future, I think. Tyler Dibbling, one of those that's come in at a young age and will have a chance to develop under Davey, which is always going to be a benefit. And Merlin Roll, who they got from Freiburg for not a load of money, but a sensible amount of money. He's 23. He's a German under-21 midfielder, probably a long-term replacement for Idrissa Gueye, but he's got a little bit more culture about him as well. I think he'll be a success.
Just on that, Sam, I talked about him as well. And he said he had his first training session on Tuesday, and he said he couldn't have been more impressed. And he also said, when someone could come in and make an immediate impact for the club is when the rest of the lads come off the training pitch, and it's like, he's decent. He's more than decent. So he's already made that first impression.
Good. Who had the most successful window then? Crook, who are you going for?
Listen, I'm still going Liverpool. It was almost 2 or 3 windows rolled into one. Yes, they'll be disappointed not to get Mark Guehi, but to bring in the calibre of player they have when they were already Premier League champions, I think it's pretty ominous for the rest of the division. But to say, honourable mention for Sunderland. And by the way, it's because of the Isak saga, I think actually people will be detracted or distracted from how good a window Newcastle had. Aaron Ramsdale upgrades the goalkeeper department. Malik Chow upgrades them defensively, and they've got injury issues there with Sven Botman's constant battle to stay fit. Elanga and Ramsey, 2 up-and-coming, young, proven Premier League players, will enhance the squad. And they've now got 2 centre-forwards battling for that position. 2 centre-forwards you would expect to stay fit for the season, which, with respect, Callum Wilson wasn't able to do. So I think credit to Eddie Howe and Andy Howe. They've been operating without a sporting director. They've had the Isak fiasco going on in the background. I think Newcastle had a very good window.
Arsenal brought in 8 new players, stiffened their defence again, but also gave themselves a few new attacking dimensions. If Gyökeres can fire, then they've got a good battalion of attacking talent now. City have added 5 new players, revamping the goalkeeping department completely. Donnarumma, obviously, coming in on deadline day. So they've got 2 new goalkeepers now. So Donnarumma and Trafford will fight for the number 1 spot, but they still rely to me on multifunctional players playing out of position too often, especially at the back. They don't have an out-and-out right fullback. Rico Lewis, nominally a midfield player, has been playing a lot of his football at right back. Matthias Nunez has been repurposed into that area. But apart from that, left back situation as well. They've got Ain't Nori, but otherwise you're asking Gvardiol to go out there. They've lost the Kanji, so they're a little bit lighter in that middle area too. So there's a lot. I mean, I know he likes working with a tight squad, but a couple of injuries in that squad, and you hope that doesn't happen. And there's, again, my pick for title winners looks a little bit shaky. Chelsea have added 7 or 8 first-team squad members. They've sent 24 players out of the squad. It's not a revolving door, is it, at Stamford Bridge? Oh, my word. It's like you need a ferry to get people out of the building. They sent 4 to Strasbourg as well. Wow. Didn't see that coming. Colwell's injury, Delap's injury, Palmer's injury means that maybe 3 of their 5 most important players are currently out. It's a little concern. A lot falls on João Pedro's shoulders. But Esteval, I think, should be a really good capture. A little bit quiet against Fulham, but very good against West Ham. And I am excited to see what the latest left winger they've got from Manchester United does. Some teams that didn't have the greatest of window, or certainly I think that was the feeling before the last week. Aston Villa, what do you think about what they've got? Scott?
I think Aston Villa are in a really tough place right now. What's the situation with Emi Martinez? How much is he going to be integrated with the lads having that, the fans having that? It's been a terrible start to the season. Talk about your prediction of Manchester City winning the title, and it still might happen. But, my prediction for a team to really struggle was Newcastle, and I based that on the Alexander Isak situation. But actually, they've really impressed me. Still, obviously, could get a lot better. But the attitude and the performance has been a lot better, whereas Villa's really hasn't. So you're asking players who have come in late to gel immediately. That's not an easy thing to do. Just going back on the teams that have done well, I basically said what you've said. I think Sunderland, Liverpool. I did mention Arsenal as well because he's got no real excuses now, Mikel Arteta. He's got everything, not just that number 9, but he's got probably the strongest squad in the Premier League. And Chelsea, in terms of their selling, almost £350 million. But Villa, Wolves, Palace, Leeds, West Ham, all of those, I think, can worry a little bit. Crookies United, I think, needed a senior goalkeeper and a dynamic midfielder. I'm not sure they needed 2 number 10s because you've got Bruno a little bit out of position and he rarely gets injured. So the money for one of those 10s could have been spent elsewhere. So we'll have to wait and see how they do. But I think still, and it's not just because of Crookie, and I love him dearly. It was great listening to him. It really was. This has been one of the most exciting windows that have got me the most excited for a long, long time. And we have got a fascinating Premier League season coming up.
Well, I just think it shows that the Premier League is king, isn't it? I think we knew that anyway. But to see, it's not just king. It's overlord. It literally runs the game now. The money that goes into the Premier League and that is spent by the Premier League keeps the rest of the league going because it's spent elsewhere. It's quite fascinating, really, the disparity between what happens in the Premier League and what happens elsewhere. It is the place to be. It's why we love it. On Aston Villa, I think Harvey Elliott is a really good signing. I think that's a super signing for them. Sancho, obviously, is another body. We'll see how he gets on this time around. He did okay at Chelsea. Nothing major, but he did okay at Chelsea. Obviously won a trophy and scored a goal in the final. They look a little bit light in deep line midfield. Maybe Tielemans is going to have to play a little bit further back now. Kamara and Annan are currently injured, but they're the only 2 that really sort of specialise in that position. They do have a lot of good attacking options, though, really. And I know Rodgers hasn't had the best of 6 months, but Rodgers, Watkins, Marlon, Elliott, Sancho, Gousson, I mean, they should have enough to be competitive, but it's nowhere near as strong as they were at the end of last season. Before we go any further, Crook, do you just want to have a quick word on Manchester United? Because Cunha and Burmo, Sesko, Seni Lamans, I thought they probably needed a little bit more than that in this window. It's not the transformative window I was expecting.
Well, if you listen to Sir Jim Ratcliffe before the summer, then there was no money to spend, and they spent more than 200 million quid on 3 new forwards. So, yeah, I understand your point. I think the big omission from the window is that holding midfielder, the Carlos Baliba stuff was never really going to get off the ground. I didn't believe it right from the start, and was proved right. We'll see. We'll see if that changes in the summer. It's interesting that he's not had a brilliant start to the season with Brighton. Obviously, was taken off for, quotes, tactical reasons against Everton. I think clearly his head has been affected by the speculation, which is a little bit unfair. But the squad is better. No question about that. They were lacking goals last season. They've addressed that particular issue. Interesting to see how the young goalkeeper does. There's a lot of United fans who I think would have preferred Emi Martinez, but financially this deal probably makes more sense in the long term. But he's still got to solve that midfield issue. And obviously Kobbie Mainoo stayed, and I did get a message from someone close to Mainoo a couple of days after the window, and they said that this is not a good outcome for Kobbie. So let's see how he can be reintegrated into the team.
Okay, interesting. Not a good outcome for Manchester United in the Carabao Cup either. They went out to Grimsby, but Grimsby have been fined 20 grand for fielding an ineligible player. They knocked out United on penalties, 2-2 on the night, and then after 90 minutes penalty shootout, they won 12-11. Clark Adore, who joined the day before on loan from Bradford City, came on as a substitute late in the game, but it was later realised that he had been registered 1 minute and 59 seconds after the midday deadline. Adore came on in the 73rd minute, had his penalty saved by Andre Onana in the shootout, and Scott wants them thrown out as a result. Don't you, Scott? You're not happy with the fine. You want them thrown out.
I do not want them thrown out. I do not want them thrown out. But I thought Crookie might have bitten a little bit more on this, because I put it on the group WhatsApp that what happened.
He certainly doesn't want it replayed after the last time, does he?
Well, yeah, you might get embarrassed twice. But look, I remember when I was at West Ham, we had a young lad, Manny Omayinmi, and he was a great lad, and he was on loan. Where was he on loan? Gillingham, was it? Earlier in the season, and he played in one of the cup rounds. So he was on the bench. He came off the bench. We got past Aston Villa. Then it was found out that obviously he can't play for in the competition with two different teams. So we had to replay the game, and we ended up getting knocked out by Villa. So I just put it out there. Why have Man U not turned around and I wonder. Yeah, no, they will get beaten again, won't they? That's why.
Well, now, do you know what? It was humiliating enough first time round. I don't know if you saw it actually, but the Grimsby media team, when they announced their lineup for the following league game, they did it with a tactics board. They lost 1-0 to Bristol Rovers, by the way, which was always going to happen. So a bit of karma there. But there's been enough humiliation, and it would have been embarrassing if a club of Manchester United's size and stature took advantage of this administrative error and somehow got themselves back in the League Cup. I think it's best just to draw a line under the whole sorry saga, to be honest.
So basically he's saying he's scared to go back. That's what he's saying. Right, okay. England might be scared to face Andorra again after what happened last time. But that's what they're doing this weekend, live on talkSPORT at Villa Park. The first of 2 World Cup qualifiers back-to-back. We're going to be joined by Serbian journalist Nebojsa Markovic very shortly. He's going to take us through the Serbian team and what to expect. Let's first of all, though, just have a quick chat about Andorra. It's common knowledge that they're no world beaters, and I'm sure that they won't be. Well, they shouldn't be too much of a problem for England. But I was in Barcelona in June, and it was a problem. It was a massive problem, and they have got better, and I know they've done a lot of work in development, and their under-21s once gave England a really good game and all this kind of stuff. But let's get real here. We've just talked about the lure of the Premier League and how much it is so much larger, more lucrative, more skillful now probably than any other league, more physical. Scott, they've got to make mincemeat of Andorra, haven't they, on Saturday night? Otherwise, Thomas Tuchel is going to get absolute pelters, isn't he?
Well, I just wonder, with Crookie scoring that unbelievable goal from 4 yards out at Fratton Park, has he not put his hands up?
8 yards.
No, hold on, Crook. You can't keep changing the measurement, right? If we keep saying 4 yards and you keep correcting us, but it keeps getting further away every time you do. So the first time it was 6, then it was 7, and now it's 8.
Be halfway line by the end of the season.
off his backside, whichever one it was, he could play up front, and we should win this. But it was a really poor performance, really laboured performance, and I'm fascinated to see what Thomas Tuchel will do this. What's the mindset here to make sure you win this particular game, or are we still developing ahead? Because to actually win the game and win it by 4, 5, 6, 7 can start creating a little bit more confidence elsewhere. But whatever 11 he puts out, absolutely, we should do this. It's just, is it 4-3-3? Is it 4-2-3-1? Do you put in Elliot Anderson? I personally would like to see him start now. I think he's been brilliant for the under-21s. He's started the season really well. That pass he did early on in the season was just sensational for Forest.
The snap pass in the first game of the season, wasn't it, against Crystal Palace?
Against Brentford.
Brentford, sorry, yeah.
I just think he's ready. He's ready for Thomas Tuchel to see if he's ready to be a squad player. Not necessarily a first 11, but I think this is, are you ready to be an England player? Are you ready to handle that kind of hassle and pressure that comes with it that you don't get in the under-21? So for me, I'd like to see him play alongside Declan Rice, and we'll have to see who plays in number 10. I really like Morgan Rogers personally, so I'd love to see him play as well.
Yeah, do you know what? I come round to the sort of way of thinking that actually Thomas Tuchel is doing his best to try and see as many different players as possible in camp and on the field, because there's another big churn in terms of people coming into the squad and going out of the squad this time around. Another 10 new players that weren't in the squad last time that are involved this time. And I thought, first of all, that's to do with injury and whatever. But actually, the more I think about it, and going back and looking at some of the other squads, he is just trying to see as many as possible. And I know that Jared Bowen was left out during the summer, and a lot was sort of made of that. And actually, it was because he just wanted to look at different players. And I know Scott's got a bit funny about Trent not being involved today. But, he doesn't need to be involved because he knows what Trent can do. And he wants to have a look at Reece James to see if he's robust enough to be able to play regularly, because let's be honest, the kid hasn't played much for Chelsea this season. He's only been off the bench in 2 of the 3 games. And he wants to look at Livramento, who he didn't have in the summer, but has now because of the under-21s. He went off to do the under-21s. So I think he's still sort of experimenting a little bit. That's not great in terms of results, because Senegal was a poor performance as well. But I think he's probably realised you're never going to get into a rhythm with this group, because there's always injuries, there's always pullouts. So you're never going to get a settled 11 to be able to develop a team. So he just needs to find in his own mind what he thinks is the core of the group. And then between now and beginning of May, settle on that. And then eventually they'll find themselves in a situation where he'll pick a team from that group next summer. I think that's probably the process now, just whittling down the pool of players that he's going to use.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that he's obviously opted not to take the full quota with this squad. It was 26, wasn't it, you were allowed? He's only taken 24. If you're not in this 24 and you're fit, maybe with the exception of Trent for the reasons that you've just said, but I would be worried as to whether or not you're going to be able to get a seat on the plane next summer. I've got to applaud Scott. The use of the word fascinating, and England against Andorra don't often go together. I switched off at half-time last time these two met because it was absolutely abysmal. I'm not necessarily going to make an appointment to view. I'm intrigued by the Serbia game. I couldn't really care less about this one, to be honest. I think it's a big problem with international football. Fascinating piece that Jonathan Norcroft wrote in the Times this morning. England have never played against Lionel Messi for Argentina. Since they last played Argentina, they've played Andorra on half a dozen occasions. What's the point, honestly? This is a brilliant advert for pre-qualifiers. And England can't win, really. If they win 6-0, it's expected. If they underwhelm, like they did in the first game, then they're going to get hammered. I think this is an absolutely pointless fixture. I really do. You're not going to learn anything about this England team.
I've spoken about this a lot, and I said I came up with that system, didn't I, last international break, about using the sort of Swiss model that they use in the Champions League for qualification, and instead of the Nations League should become the whole thing, the qualification period and the World Cup qualification period as well, Euros and World Cup qualification period, and try and make it a little bit more competitive. Because at the moment it is difficult. It is difficult to garner interest, especially with England, because they're so good. But for the other nations, I'm not necessarily sure that is the case. On Tuesday night, we're going off to Belgrade to see Serbia in action. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined now by Nebojsa Markovic, who is a Serbian journalist. Hello, thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us. Did I get that right, by the way? I've got to work on my Serbian
You got it
pronunciation.
almost perfect. So, yeah, that's great.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you very much for joining us. Listen, obviously Serbia in a different position to England in that they started slightly behind England in terms of World Cup qualification. But what is the current picture and what's the feeling in Serbia about the team? Because we know a few of the players.
Yes, the feeling in Serbia is not really positive that much. We started behind because of those matches against Austria in the Nations League, and we really performed well, which was a kind of a surprise because we know how strong Austria is. And we stayed in the top division of the Nations League. But then that trip to Albania was far from good, and we basically salvaged a draw because George Petrovic of Bournemouth now he saved the penalty. So it was a poor match from us, and we were lucky to escape with a point, and it was not a great performance. And then came Andorra, which we won with Aleksandar Mitrovic's hat trick on his 100th match for Serbia. So that was good, but that was, as you mentioned, that was expected. You always want to win those 3 points against those weaker sides. So the expectations here are not that great. We know how World Cup qualifying is much tougher than for the Euros, and to be top of the group ahead of England is a big task. And we haven't been in a great mood since the Euros because we underwhelmed there as well, as you remember, because we were in the same group. And ever since, it's kind of... We had some decent matches in the Nations League, and, maybe we did really well against Spain in Belgrade, which was their first match after winning the Euros. But in general, the vibe is not really positive, and some of our key players are not playing that much for their clubs, so that's another problem.
Nebojsa, what system do you play? And I look at the forward players. I mean, there are a lot of players who, are in the Premier League, but in terms of Mitrovic and Vlahovic as well, on paper, that looks really, really good. But do they play together?
They do. We usually play with 3 center backs. That's our standard formation now because it suits Milenkovic from Nottingham Forest, who plays centrally, and then Strahinja Pavlovic from AC Milan, who plays on the left, and he's that left-footed player that can bring the ball forward. But it's going to be interesting whether we are going to play with 2 strikers against England for several reasons. Clearly, one is that Mitrovic and Vlahovic are not the most mobile strikers, and it can put a strain on your midfield when you have both of them on the pitch, and then against England that's a special problem. And then there's also the fact that Mitrovic basically hasn't played since that match against Andorra in June, and he was at the Club World Cup, but he didn't play for Al Hilal, and he's really he's not had any games, so it's going to be interesting to see how much he's going to play against Latvia, and if he's going to maybe be saved for the bench, or our head coach Stojkovic is known for making surprises, so anything is possible. We could have like 6 or 7 attacking minded players against England, but then in the matches like a must-win match against Denmark at the Euros, he started with 4 defensive midfielders in the starting 11. So there's all kinds of things are possible, but often and recently, we did play with both Mitrovic and Vlahovic.
Obviously, Serbia come into the game. We know that they're unbeaten, although you said they're not in a great moment. How big a game is it? I mean, it's obviously a big game in the context of World Cup qualifying, but we've just been talking about the value of the Premier League. Is there excitement about England coming to town? What's the feeling?
Yes, there is excitement, and whenever you have a big national team coming to Serbia, like England are, there's big excitement, and the stands are going to be packed, and there's people trying to somehow find the tickets for the match, which are now it's not gonna happen because those went by fast. They were sold really quickly, so it's gonna be packed, and people follow England very much. Premier League is clearly the most popular foreign league in Serbia. So, all the fans know all the players, and they follow all the clubs. And there's, some of the biggest English clubs have their own fan clubs in Serbia. So the fans here are excited to see these players coming to Belgrade. But we've been known historically to be able, maybe not to beat these stronger sides, these strongest European sides, but to hold them to a draw, especially in Belgrade with the fans behind their backs. So there is excitement, and there is this kind of quiet belief that maybe we can maybe get a point off England.
There is a little bit of history between the two countries, isn't there? I mean, if you go back to 2012 in under-21 qualifying, there was almost a riot, actually, wasn't there? Because there was suggestion of racist abuse from the stands. I mean, Jordan Henderson was in the team as the captain of the under-21s back then, and he said that there were stones, coins and seats being thrown at us. There was also an issue, I think, back in 2007 at the under-21 European Championships. What have the Serbian FA put in place to ensure that sort of stuff doesn't happen again?
I don't believe anything like that will happen. I think this is going to just be one of those regular nice nights at the Red Star Stadium that with 50,000 people, and I think it's going to be a really beautiful atmosphere for both teams to play in, and they're definitely going to try and maybe help our national team win. But I don't think we're going to see anything too special in the stands this time around.
Good news, and we are looking forward to coming out to see you as well. Are you going to sort out a nice restaurant recommendation for us? Is that okay? Can you do that? Nice place to go and have a little bit of a post-match debrief as well. We like that.
Yeah, we can do restaurants, we can do pubs, we can do nightclubs, whatever you need. Belgrade has it to offer you. So you just come here prepared. Yeah.
Nebojsa, be careful what you say. Sam will be in your house for the next 3-4 days after that. Don't worry.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Nebojsa, thank you very much. Nebojsa Markovic joining us from Belgrade to talk about what England can expect in Serbia. Both games live on talkSPORT. Andorra at Villa Park Saturday evening, and on Tuesday night in Belgrade, England take on Serbia. Hardest away game there is, actually, I think, in this World Cup qualifying campaign. Crookmeister, have you got any more days left in Butlins?
I've got one more night tonight, and then I'm back with you tomorrow morning. So I'll show you the battle scars in the morning.
Oh yeah, about that. I don't know what's going to happen there. There's a little bit of a sketchy situation going on. Maybe we might be split up tomorrow. You never know. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Scotty. Thank you. We'll be back with you on actually Sunday afternoon. We're going to record it Sunday morning after the England game. We've got Aaron Lennon joining us for a debrief on England Andorra, and to have a look ahead to the Serbia game, but also to just catch up with any big stories that are happening in and around the Premier League. Looking forward to that. Aaron Lennon joining us this weekend. It's talkSPORT's Premier League All Access. Rate and review the podcast and let everybody know about it.